It's time to go down on the farm and talk about stress. Mr. Scott Lay joining me on the hotline. Welcome back to the show.
Dennis, always a pleasure to be with you and your listeners.
It's been a weird year, and I know I say that a lot when I talk to you because I think the idea of normal weather is gone. And I do believe, Scott, that all of those different weather factors are adding to the stress.
Indeed they are, and while I'm not a meteorologist, nor do I attempt to forecast what may or may not happen with weather, I can assure you one thing, and that is in the months of June and July, heat will happen in every zip code, every crop. And while there's nothing that exists that increases yield in any crop, now it's just a matter of trying to protect what yield potential exists. And today with Terramar, we have a technology that begins to help minimizing the impact of that heat stress on a crop.
And that is very key because we've seen it here where we've already had a pretty prolonged period of those hot nights. And, are we still looking at anything over, say, 73, 74 degrees to be a yield robber as far as those low temperatures at night?
I don't know the exact number of degrees Fahrenheit. Obviously, Dr. Elwin Taylor from Iowa State talks about or references 70 degrees Fahrenheit for an evening low is kind of the line of demarcation at which stress occurs in a corn crop. But what I can tell you is through some of the work we've done over the last several years in charting the canopy temperature of the crop, anytime you can minimize that temperature within the crop canopy, that's a good day for that crop if you can minimize it by 2 to 4 degrees Fahrenheit, which is what we're seeing in a number of the replicated trials we've conducted.
And the cool thing about that, Scott, is we know we're going to get heat. We know we're going to get more heat going forward. And so the question that I have for you is how much will it benefit if we do another application of Terramar with the fungicides?
No, I think that's the question we're focused in on. And again, let's review what are the negative detriments to heat on a crop. We know that it impacts the ability for that plant to photosynthesize. We know that it affects the plant's ability to transpire water. We know that it affects the plant's ability to mobilize nutrients into the plant and fill grain. So, again, if we can minimize that canopy temperature by 2 to 4 degrees Fahrenheit, that's a positive. Secondarily, if we can increase the amount of nutrient uptake or movement in that plant, which we can document as well, somewhere in the range of 10 to 15% increases in tissue samples, that's also a positive for that plant. Does that translate to yield? More often than not, it does. But more importantly, again, at each stage of the game, during the reproductive stage where we are today, we're attempting to increase the amount of nutrients available for that plant to move starches and sugars to that forming grain. And if we can do that, we have a better opportunity to yield.
If you look at our weather this year, we had really wet conditions early, so a lot of corn didn't get planted until much later. Then we got really dry to the point that I'm not so sure that we really got the roots going very deep. And then we've had heavy rains here recently, which I know that isn't always the friendliest thing for the corn crop, in addition to some wind and hail damage in some parts that hasn't been enough to be terminal for the crop, but it certainly didn't do it any favors. Now we take that already stressed out corn that may not have the deepest root structure this year, and then we add more heat. Is there such a thing as cumulative effect of stress on a plant in that way?
I think there certainly is a compounding effect. That's how I refer to it as stresses. And again, as we reach this critical reproductive stage, whether it be in corn or soybeans or perhaps other crops, oftentimes fungicides are applied in an effort to minimize the impact of disease. And that's certainly a tremendous step in the right direction. But aside from diseases, all the other factors you just articulated related to weather and the changing circumstances brought about by weather, the Terramar, in concert with the fungicide, provides a synergistic effect. And again, if we can minimize the impact of a disease, tar spot or gray leaf spot or northern corn leaf blight, while minimizing the canopy temperature of that crop to increase photosynthesis and nutrient uptake, again, the cumulative effect of that is positive. So, again, we're attempting to preserve yield potential, and we believe that's our best opportunity to do so.
And I talked to a producer last weekend and was asking him, are you changing your strategy with the grain prices where they are? And he says, yes, I'm ensuring that I can get every additional bushel because I need that to make money this year.
Well, whoever that gentleman is you spoke to said a mouthful, and he's right. Today's commodity price of corn and soybeans is not what it was a year ago, and certainly not what we would like for it to be. The only other lever that can be pulled, so to speak, to impact net farm income is the yield. And again, as I've said several times, we're not going to increase yield at this point. We're simply trying to preserve what yield potential exists. So if the crop is worth investing in, and again, that's a decision each and every operation needs to make on their own, I understand that. But if there's worth making the investment in the crop to preserve yield potential, fungicide plus Terramar is a very consistent payback in terms of return on investment.